This conference will now be recorded.
Okay, this is the high-risk recurrent advanced prostate cancer group for March the 24th with, it looks like an august crew of close to 20 people already. I'm going to read off the list of the people that I have. Just let me know if I missed anybody after I'm done. And then we'll come back and visit with all of you to see who needs time today and who doesn't. Len, Ken Anderson, Jake, Peter, Kafka, Brian, Carl Foreman, Gene Spessard, John Appler, Larry Fish, Les, Paul Frieda, Rich Hartzell, Sylvester Mann, Dennis Correa, Jerry Pelfrey, John Hall, and Harrell. Did I miss anybody? Okay. All right. Now.
Well, that's a very good turnout.
Yeah. Now, I am going to check through Harrell, Rich Hartzell, and Gene Spessard. Since you've never been with us before, we will carve out some time at the beginning to talk to you. And then what I want to do, though, first is find out how many of our regular men need time tonight, so it gives me an idea how much we can spend with you new men before we get into working with each of you. So I'm just going to read off my list, excluding the 3 new men. Len, did you need any time tonight?
No, I don't, Rick. Thank you.
Ken Anderson, anything for you?
No, I'm good, thanks.
You're almost at the top, Jake, but not quite. Anything for you?
No, I'm okay, Rick. Thank you.
Okay. Peter, anything you'd like to talk about tonight? Nice shirt there, Peter.
Yeah. No, I think I'm okay. I just have one small question from a video I was just watching. But I'm okay.
All right. Well, we'll give you the question for the video. Brian Heisey, anything for you tonight?
Yeah, just a little something.
Okay. Brian, we're sorry you didn't make it to Maui again. What's going on here? Every time you decide to go, something happens.
Yeah, I know, it figures. I would have been locked down, it sounds like, in my place out there.
You would have been. Well, you could have gone and stayed at Peter's and picked bananas with him. Okay, Carl Foreman, anything for you?
Yes, 1 or 2 important questions.
Okay. John Appler, anything you'd like to talk about tonight?
No, Rick, I'm okay, thank you.
Okay, Larry Fish, how about you?
Not tonight, Rick, thanks, I'm good.
Good. Les Shelderup, anything for you?
Tonight, thanks.
Okay, Paul Frieda, anything we can help you with tonight?
Nothing for me tonight, thanks.
Okay. Sylvester, anything for you?
No, thank you.
Okay. Dennis, anything for you? Mr. Correa, come in, Mr. Correa, up the street. We can't hear you, Dennis. And we need you on the line tonight because we've got another gentleman from Tucson. So I see that your microphone is on, but we can't hear you, sir. So you may have to call in. Okay. Jerry Pelfrey and John Hall.
I just got one really simple question.
Okay, well, we've got a little conversation to have between you and John, which we'll probably do right after the new men, and then we'll come back to you, okay? And Harrell, Harrell is a new man. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is start with Gene Spessard, who we met last night on Peter's call, and who is a, what would I say, state fellow statesman, fellow state person, an Arizonan. So we have, look at this, we have 4 Arizonans on this call, and 3 of them are from Tucson. That's pretty good. Well, we really have 4 Arizonans, because we got to count Jerry Pelfrey as well, really, as an Arizonan, don't we? Yeah. So well, we're well represented today. Gene, what we normally do is we'll probably take about 20 minutes with each of the new men, and then we'll get into the people that have got something to talk about tonight. Tell us a little bit about your situation. I've mentioned where you are, but you can tell them more. Dennis Correa is in Tucson as well and has recurrent advanced disease, so he's a really good sounding board for you. And let us know what specific questions you have, and then we'll give you some feedback. So if you're comfortable with the floor, we'll give you the floor.
Okay. Try to make this not too lengthy. I was diagnosed in 2015. I had Gleason 7, 4+3, and elected to have robotic surgery. It went well, with, you know, the usual side effects, I suppose. The pathology report was with clear margins, but that the cancer had gotten into the capsule, so it was kind of near. And for about 3 years, checking PSA, it was always, you know, below their detectable level. But a little over a year ago, it started creeping up, and it just kind of gradually, slowly crept up relentlessly. So I elected to have radiation treatment and androgen deprivation therapy. Finished the radiation a couple of weeks ago, and you know, the ADT was for 6 months, so I'm still feeling the effects of the second shot. And you know, at this point, I'm just kind of waiting to see how things go, and hopefully nothing will show up until, you know, forever maybe, but whatever. Don't really have too many specific questions. If you guys have any suggestions or feedback, of course, I'd like to hear it. And if not, I'll kind of lurk and see what else comes up.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's fairly good, fairly thorough introduction. What was your PSA when you were diagnosed?
You know, I honestly don't remember. It went up by about 100% over 6 months. And maybe that's more significant than the actual number, I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. Anyway, after surgery, like I said, it went down to below the, you know, their, whatever they call their detectable level of the ultra-sensitive PSA.
Do you recall if it was like a relatively high number, or are you one of these guys that doesn't make PSA?
It was pretty low. That's partly because I was taking, I think it's finasteride that tends to lower it. I think the rule of thumb is like double it.
Yeah. Do you attend the group at the U of A?
The Arizona Cancer Center? Yeah, I do.
You do?
We're currently shut down because of the...
Yeah, I get Chris Ellis. I've been there once or twice. I know Dennis has, and I asked Chris to let his membership know that we're here if anybody needs us. So maybe that's how you heard of us.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Okay. Well, welcome. So, how high did your PSA get before you intervened in 2019?
2015. Oh, you mean in 2019? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Getting your reference confused there. It had gotten up to 0.11, which I realize is still below what's considered biochemical recurrence.
Right.
But the fact that it had just kind of relentlessly been creeping up seemed to be a pretty good indication that, there was no more point in crossing my fingers and waiting.
Okay, gotcha. So let me open it up to anybody that would like to say anything to Gene.
Gene, this is Peter from last night. How often do you do a PSA test? Every 3 months, 2 months?
As of now, it'll be every 3 months, I believe.
Right, and you said you had a doubling time of 6 months recently, yes? Is that what you said?
I'm not quite sure.
100%? You said it went up 100%. That means it doubled in 6 months. Is that correct?
Okay, back when I was initially diagnosed, it about doubled between one test and the next, which was being done every 6 months. Yeah. And that led to a biopsy, and
Yeah, are you under the care of a medical oncologist or a urologist right now?
Urologist, and I will continue to at least one more time to see a radiation oncologist.
Okay, you might want to find a medical oncologist just to have on board. You don't really need them right now particularly, but I'm just thinking that, one handy thing to do, which might take a little stress out of your life, is to just get a PSA test, maybe every 6 weeks instead of every 3 months. Just keep an eye on it and kind of track the doubling time. If it starts dropping down into the 2 month range, then you've got to start thinking scans and this and that. But if you're up in the 4 months, 5 months, 6 months doubling time, you can relax quite a bit. It's not it's not panicky type of thing. But sometimes waiting 3 months for a PSA test kind of stretches it out a little long for particularly people like you and others that have had various treatments already. Just so you can keep an eye on it.
Right.
That's a thought anyway.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a definite timeline for the future at this point. And I think it's May I will have the first PSA after finishing the radiation, which I guess will give it time for the full effect of the radiation to show up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any particular issues with the hormone therapy at this point that we can help you with?
Oh, I'm enjoying it immensely. Yeah, I seem to be having the sort of standard side effects. I started with tepid flashes, and then I had warm flashes, and now I'm graduated to hot flashes. My energy's down. I had a few days when my testicles were aching, which apparently from talking to, I guess it was a radiation oncologist I saw first and talked to about it. And I guess that's just, they're shrinking. It's kind of like plate tectonics or something, the pieces just kind of don't shrink evenly or something. And you gotta, I don't think there's anything nothing unexpected, I guess.
Right. The issue with the testicles came up just recently, where one of our guys actually asked me about that because was quite concerned. And as I said to him, it might be somebody who's on the call today, that is quite common, and not to everybody, but it can happen. And it's usually related to the ADT because they were concerned about other things. As far as the hot flashes are concerned, if they're manageable, that's fine. There are some
Yeah.
things you can do. There are some drugs you can take if you don't want to take more drugs. Acupuncture is helpful. And we've even had one guy who swore by drinking ice water and felt that it really helped. So just saying. I suffered badly, so I am very empathetic.
Yeah.
The good news for you is that at least they're only talking about 6 months.
Right.
So, you know, hopefully within 12 months, you'll be through and you won't have to go back. But it's smart that you're doing it. Anyone else have anything they'd like to say to Jean? Dennis, anything that you have in mind?
Can you hear me now? Okay.
We can hear you just fine, sir.
Okay. All right. I'm just a little concerned about just staying with the urologist at this point in time. I don't know. My perspective, I think you'd want to get somebody that's a genitourinary oncologist, and just to hook up with them and get some initial base and so forth. They are much more experienced in this than the urologists are. I mean, the urologists will tell you, yes, I'm certified in prostate cancer and blah, 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 but they just don't have the level of expertise that a GU MedOnc would have.
Do you want to briefly, Dennis, you just want to share briefly, since you're a fellow Tucsonan, do you want to share briefly your doctor experience?
Yeah, I use Dr. Parminder Singh, who used to be at the U of A, the cancer center, and that's where I started with my treatments. And I unfortunately, he got a better offer up at Mayo Clinic in Phoenix, which is not all that far away. So I still see him once a year. And then he hooked me up with another oncologist for prostate cancer who is with the Arizona Blood and Cancer, the fairly new group that started in the area down here. And his name is it's a Dr. Rafiath. And he's right off of Alvernon at the northern end of Alvernon before you cross over the river. They have an office there. And he does, I get all my blood work done there and get my ADT injections there. And it's been working out good for me. They know each other well. They're well acquainted with each other. And so they discussed my situation. But that would be, I've had good luck with both of them. So if you're looking for somebody, you could get in touch with me through Rick, and I can give you more information.
I will be sure to connect and Dennis afterwards. And for those of you who are wondering about rivers through Tucson, we use the term quite loosely because the river that Dennis just referred to, we don't see too much water in it most of the year. but there is a bridge there, and it's pretty sandy beneath it. Okay, anyone else who would like to speak to Jean before we move on?
Did anyone give Jean our usual commentary about exercise?
Oh, I meant to say that. Yeah, thank you, Len. Are you exercising, Jean?
Yes, well, until they shut down the gym, I was going there several times a week. Now I'm going to have to kind of, change my emphasis, I guess. Just get some walking in or something.
Try. Yeah. I mean, if you can, try and get something in, a bike ride, a walk that gets your heart rate up, but something if you can.
I warned you when I started I was going to have to drop out, and I'm afraid I'm going to have to.
That's okay. You're very welcome, and we hope you come back. We meet every week. You're on the list.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay, pleasure.
Jean?
Lost him.
I'm sorry. Can I interrupt? I'm in New York and I'm sequestered, self-sequestering because of the lockdown, and I'm getting a food delivery, so I have to get off the call for at least 20 minutes to go
Okay,
get.
come
sorry,
right back
can't be
on
helped.
when you're ready, and we'll talk to you, Haro.
Okay, thank you very much.
Pleasure. Okay, well that makes it. So, Jerry, did you want to say something to? Was it you that wanted to say something to Jean?
Yeah, I was just going to let him know the urologist slash oncologist that I go to in Tucson, Dr. David Killian, and Dr. Singh at Mayo works with him, and definitely worked with him when Singh was down in Tucson. So I was just going to let him know that name.
Okay, well, what I'll do is when I send Jean an email to introduce him to Dennis, I'll include you, and then you guys can write to each other independently.
Sure.
Okay. Rich Hartzell, your number is up.
Before you go on,
yes,
we have somebody on the telephone. Can we interrupt for a minute?
Yeah, I bet that is David Muslin. Is that David Muslin on the telephone?
No, actually, I'm here, Rick. I'm on the screen.
Oh, you're on the screen. Okay. So
Yeah.
who do we have on the telephone? Somebody joined us on the telephone. Would you
Hi.
like?
This is Peter Monaco just joined.
Hello, Peter Monaco. And let
Hello.
me ask both of you, so I know how to allocate our time. David, did you need any time tonight?
I'm doing awesome, Rick. I'm good, thank you. I'm just listening.
Okay. And Peter, did you need any time tonight?
No, I do not. You're talking to me.
Yes, I am. Peter Monaco, I should have said. Yeah, now we have two Peters. Okay, so let's keep going. And Rich Hartzell, you sort of got the idea, and if you're comfortable doing it, why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and what brings you to the call?
Okay, can everybody hear me? Hello?
We can hear you.
Oh, okay. Well, I live in Tucson in the winter and Flagstaff in the summer.
Okay.
I was diagnosed, I'd always had PSA tests for years, and until 2018, I had a slight jump to 4 point something. We waited a couple of weeks, went back, reviewed it, dropped down again, and then 2018 in June, again as a regular physical, it had kind of came in at 6 point something, and so we again waited, looked at it 6 weeks later, and it jumped to 10. So clearly, my primary physician said we need to see a urologist. I saw a urologist, and he did a DRE, and there was no indication of anything, but he was concerned because he just thought maybe I want to do a different kind of test or two, so we did a 4K. I don't know if any of you are familiar with it.
Mm-hmm.
This was the fall of 2018, and the 4K came back with a 95 out of 100 prognosis, which is pretty bad. It also, the PSA had jumped to 20, so there was no question we were going to do a biopsy. My daughter is a trauma surgeon at UCLA, and told her about it, and she said, well, why don't you come over here? I'll get you in to do an MRI guided biopsy, which we did around Thanksgiving in 2018. The biopsy came back with 4 cores of Gleason 7, 3+4. So, and it was supposedly still encapsulated. So I was sent home with the instruction to, this is not a watch and wait. I probably need to do something, but you had a lot of options then. There was cryoablation, there was HIFU, there was radiation, there was prostatectomy. So I returned back to UCLA in January, kind of made up with my mind made up that I'd probably do prostatectomy. But my daughter wanted me to see the radiation person there just because she indicated that whole thing had come light years from the way it used to be. Meanwhile, while I was there discussing this with him, the surgeon for prostatectomy said that he was not comfortable doing that because my PSA had jumped to 30. This was, again, right during the biopsy thing. And he suggested that I do a PSMA test, which UCLA offers. It's still considered experimental, but again, thanks to my daughter, I got shoehorned into that. And this was in January 2019, and the results were absolutely horrifying. It came back with metastasis through the axial skeleton. It's all bone, but clearly out of the lower portion. It was up in ribs and some vertebrae. So at that point, there was no, all the other options were gone. The only one really available at that point was androgen deprivation. I was, of course, totally naive. I'd never had any treatment. This whole thing came totally out of the blue. So instead of doing straight androgen deprivation, it was decided I should just jump in both feet and do a CAB, which was the combined androgen blockade, which included the Zytiga. So at that point, too, in that January of 2019, PSA at that point had jumped to 107. So I was on and having monthly tests through June. Every month it dropped dramatically. It dropped to 9, then it dropped to 4, then it dropped to 0.9. And in June, it was down to 0.4. And I was at that point switched oncologists because we had moved back to Flagstaff. And Tucson and Flagstaff are many miles apart. So the oncologist I met up there, again, was part of Arizona Oncology. They're the same basic group, but obviously a different person. At that point, it had dropped to the PSA was down to 0.2, and I was having not a lot of fun, of course, with ADT. Needless to say, some of the side effects were pretty devastating for a pretty active guy who'd been married for 50 years, needless to say. So I had mentioned him that I was interested in, I'd done a lot of research, and I was interested in intermittent. And to my surprise, he said that he would consider it. If I could go for at least 3 months, if I could get my PSA down to undetectable, which by our labs in Arizona means under 0.1, if I could do that in 3 months and had no physical progression of any kind. I've never had any physical symptoms that I'm aware of. But so last fall, I in fact did come in under 0.1. And he indicated that let's go for a 1 month Lupron at that point and look at it again in November. Again, it was still under 0.1. So in conjunction with my oncologist down in Tucson, and a big sales talk on my side, quoting a number of European studies where the earlier you can start ADT or start intermittent, actually the better you are if, as it was my case, you were naive, having had no previous treatment of any sort. So as of November 13th, I've been on intermittent. December was still undetectable, but we've gone to 3-month screenings. And this last one that came in March was actually back to 0.8. My oncologist, unfortunately, had just gotten back from Czechoslovakia and is quarantined. So I haven't been able to see him and talk to him. So my first real 3-month period of intermittent, I now do have detectable prostate PSA. I'm not sure what it means. So that's why I'm really kind of questioning where I'm going, what I'm doing. Hopefully I'll be able to talk to him in next week. He will be back in his office. But until then, I just don't know. And I was talking to Brian Hazy, who's part of your group, and he suggested I might join this group today and just kind of see if other people have had similar experiences on intermittent and where it might go. So far, the intermittent is, for me, working great. I have a new lease on life, so to speak. But uh, anyway, but I'm concerned about the fact that I now have measurable PSA. I don't know what it means. So if anybody has any input they'd like to share, I'd be more than welcome to hear it. Or
Where
any
is
other
your
questions.
where is your PSA, Rich?
My PSA as of 2 weeks ago was 0.8.
0.8.
And
Okay.
that was an increase from December when it was still undetectable at less than 0.1.
Right. So we have there's a number of things that I think we'd like to cover with you. How do you know Brian? I had figured you were a Chicago local, but you're not. You're local to Tucson, so you're my local.
I'm actually a local to Flagstaff, if you really want to go there. But,
okay, close enough.
Flagstaff in the summer, Tucson in the winter. But Arizona will go for that.
Okay.
I had met Brian through, Brian was there. It was one of the programs that offered to put people in contact with similar afflicted people. And Brian and I had spoken last fall, and I had given him some of this history. And just last night, in fact, he had sent me an email giving me kind of an update for him, and I gave him an update for me. And that's when we spoke a little while ago, and he mentioned this phone call.
Absolutely.
And I thought I'd like to join you. So here I am.
Well, you are very welcome. And if you'd like to either go to our website, or if you want to send me your email or give me your email, we'll make sure you get on the list so you get a weekly reminder for this call.
I would be happy to do that.
So you can either send me a message in the chat window, or you can go to ancan.org, ancan.org, and sign up, but we'll get you on there. We have a number of men who have done intermittent on this call. And so rather than me babbling, let me start off with either Peter or Len, whichever one wants to jump in, and maybe you can share your experience on intermittent.
Go ahead, Len.
Okay, I'll go first. I've been on 2 separate rounds of intermittent ADT. My first one didn't last too long. I went from 0.2 to 10.9 in about 7 months. And then I went back on ADT. And then I was on it for maybe another year and a half. Then I had radiation therapy, and it went down to 0.1. And then I went on what amounted to 28 months of intermittent ADT. So drug-free for 28 months before I had to, the PSA rose to 2.4. And at that point, I had a PSMA scan like you did, and discovered that I had 3 bone mets. So maybe I stayed on a little bit too long. But the problem was I had waited 6 months just to get into the NIH trial for PSMA. So, I mean, I'm a big proponent of intermittent ADT because I felt it gave me a chance to, rebuild muscle mass and, just feel like a normal non-cancer patient for some time. And so I was diagnosed in 2014 with a Gleason 9, which is more aggressive than what you've got. And I'm still hormone sensitive after 6 years, which is pretty unusual. I think if I was on continuous ADT, I really doubt that I would still have been hormone sensitive all that time. What else? Yeah, I mean, I guess that's it. I'll turn it over to you, Peter.
Can I ask a question? Len, what does hormone sensitive mean?
Oh, it means that you are still responding your PSA is still declining while you're taking the ADT drugs.
Got it.
And there comes a point where if you are no longer responding, then they consider that castrate-resistant prostate cancer.
Right. Thank you, Len.
Peter, I have a quick question for Rich. Rich, how old are you?
Whom are you asking?
You. Rich.
Oh, me. I'm 71. I'll be 72 the end of this month.
Okay. Well, your contemporary Peter Kafka is eager to tell you about his experience.
I'm eager to hear.
Okay, Rich. I live in Hawaii. I live on the island of Maui, and I've been fighting this for almost 6 years now, and I've been through the mill, but I'm also like Len, a Gleason 9. I knew I had very aggressive disease from the get-go. I don't have any bone metastasis yet, though. But I've been on intermittent ADT on and off at least 3 times over 5.5 years. I've taken a year vacation. I took a year off of Zytiga and Lupron in all of 2018. I took off 16 months at one point. So, and I agree with you, it does give you a new lease on life. But I mean, you come out of it. I don't know if you check your testosterone regularly with your blood test, but it's useful because it lets you know how fast your testosterone comes back. Even though you can feel it internally, it gives you a number, and you can track it. Mine used to come back in about 4 months each of the 3 times I went off. So I've known from the get-go that this was it's controversial therapy, but for my mind, it works. And one of the side benefits I noticed is that as keep going back on ADT, the side effects are much, much less. Right now, I'm on a drug called darolutamide or Nubeqa by Bayer, which is a second-line anti-androgen. I was on Zytiga for a year. I didn't like it. So now I'm on something different, which doesn't have the same mental fog that Zytiga had. But I'm tolerating it real well. I don't find the huge fatigue and the hot flashes and this and that anymore. So it's just speculative. I don't know. I can't tell you as a clinician or I'm not a doctor, but I've found that just the experience of doing intermittent has somehow sensitized me to it. As Len said, I'm also hormone sensitive. The drugs are still working for me. And I'm doing chemo right now as well because my disease came back. So you did a PSMA test. PSMA is a really valuable test. Sometimes you can get it on trial, so you don't have to pay it out of pocket. I don't know what UCLA charges now, but $2,500 or something like that for it off the shelf. Hopefully it'll be approved this year, so Medicare will pay for it. But if you check your blood tests, really frequently, like I do mine every month. I've been doing mine every month for 5.5 years, and I watch it very carefully, and I know exactly when it's starting to double and go up. And I've already had 2 PSMA tests, and then I go for treatment, and then it knocks it down, and I go off treatment, and et cetera, et cetera. So you can manage this disease, and that's one of the beautiful things that I've found about intermittent.
Rich,
I was going to say that's very encouraging to hear. So
I'd like to make one more comment, and then I want to open it up. I want to take what you want to ask us. You probably heard us talk about this when we spoke to Jean Spessard. For your situation, I think most of the men on this call would strongly recommend that you get a specialized genitourinary medical oncologist as your quarterback. Now, there are a couple of decent people at UCLA that you might find through your daughter. We can recommend some folks, but really what you need is somebody with a specialized knowledge. And I'll give you one example why. When you were diagnosed back in early 19 with metastatic disease throughout your spine and ribs, I can't remember if the studies were then available or not, but they came out right around that time. The recommendation probably for somebody like you, if you would have been willing to do it, was early chemotherapy rather than the Zytiga. The Zytiga with the ADT is an acceptable protocol when you have low volume metastasis. But the studies have shown that the high volume metastasis probably does better with chemotherapy. Now, a genitourinary medical oncologist would know that right away and would have the discussion with you. Maybe they did have the discussion with you, I'm not sure. But prostate cancer is really so specialized that the stand, as Dennis Correa mentioned earlier, the standard that you find in either Flagstaff or Tucson, and by the way, Jerry Pelfrey was up in Prescott for over a year, and we just don't have, other than a couple of very good guys at Mayo in Phoenix who would work as a GU med onc for you, we don't have those people in Arizona. So Ken Anderson, who's also on this call right now, lives in Phoenix, uses a very good doctor, Paul Korn, out of MD Anderson, together with a local doctor. Dennis uses Parminder Singh at Mayo, along with a local doctor. And there are other people. Peter on Maui uses a GU med onc in California, in Southern California. And I think if you were to take one thing away from this call, it would be to consider getting a genitourinary medical oncologist on your team.
I would certainly second that, especially since you're not that far from Mayo or MD Anderson in Phoenix. That's my 2 cents.
Okay. I was continuing to use some resources at UCLA, but I haven't more recently because it seems like the team that I've had between Tucson and Flagstaff, the two oncologists, seem to be pretty capable in understanding what I was interested in doing. And as I say, I did a lot of research and presented it to them, and I was able, for what it's worth, convinced them to let me try the intermittent part earlier than the 1 year sort of period that's kind of the standard. And the reason being that a lot of European studies have shown that, in fact, the earlier you can do it, particularly if you're naive, as I was, that you're giving the cancer much less chance to become castrate independent or resistant. So I don't know whether that's true or not, but I'm kind of taking that on faith. And at this point, as I say, I don't really know where I stand because I only have this 1 3-month period being on intermittent, and I have nothing to compare it with. And as I say, my primary oncologist is incognito because he's at this point totally sequestered from coming to Europe.
Hi, it's Larry Fish. So the one thing that you said that struck me was that you did a lot of you started out kind of naive, and you did a lot of primary research on your own, and you
Yes, when I say, Larry, I'm sorry, when I say naive, I'm meaning it very specifically.
I
In the
know.
world, okay, I'm meaning that I had no previous treatment of any sort.
Right. Oh, treatment
Okay.
naive. But you did research and then presented that and to discuss with your oncologist. And
Yeah, correct.
that's interesting. I can present a lot of research to my oncologist, my genitourinary oncologist at Sloan, and she knows everything I talk about. And
Okay.
I'm not presenting her with ideas that she continues and agree with. I present my ideas, and she, and she's the sounding board for which of those things are reasonable, and then presents me with 5 and 10 other things that she might be thinking about and why she would suggest A or B or C.
Okay.
And that distinction has been very important to me. And that's something you can get from somebody who is a top level uh, prostate oncologist specialist who is also involved in research. They're reading 2 and 3 and 4 hours every night. They know every study going on. They know all the trials. Maybe at this stage you're probably okay the way you've been going ahead. Probably is a fine choice. Maybe it was better option to consider, like Rick said, docetaxel or something early on, like I had been lucky enough to do. But just the idea that this disease can have a long range, and if you get someone like that who has your case and sees you a few times, you can sort of use them for when things might get tough or may not. Hopefully not, but if they do, you have somebody who is you really will feel 100% confident with, rather than you being the person. I don't know if that's true, but that's what it sounded like. That's all. So I'm seconding, thirding what everybody else is saying about getting a real top specialist on your team.
Okay.
Rich, it's
I appreciate
Dennis
that.
Dennis Correa. One quick question. You mentioned you had multiple bone metastasis. Is that correct? In ribs?
That's
And
correct.
how many do you know?
I have, yes. Actually, the whole pelvic girdle area is covered. I have both ilia and the sacrum have it, and 12th thoracic, 12th, 7th, 6th, 5th left ribs, right side 5th rib, and right scapula, and the 7th cervical. Now, these, remember, came out of the PSMA. My daughter, who's the surgeon at UCLA, learned to read the PSMA for me, which I appreciate. And she explained to me that, in fact, some of the stuff that showed up, well, every bit as lethal, of course, as prostate cancer can be. Some of this was almost undetectable other than through these fancy tests. That doesn't mean that it's any, as I say, any less dangerous, of course. But
Well, my reason
that
for
gives you the
asking is
extent. I'm
it
sorry, that
sounds
just
like,
gives you the extent of
yeah,
my
yeah, it
metastasis.
just sounds, well, that would be large volume bone
Yes,
metastasis.
that's what I'm told it
I'm
is.
not a doctor, but some of these other fellows that are on the intermittent, I think one of the criteria is you have to be not large volume metastasis. Is that correct, Rick or Len?
I'll defer to Len.
Yeah, actually, I think I missed that you had extensive bone metastases. Not sure going on intermittent therapy would be a great idea for you, but this is another reason why you need to have a medical oncologist, GU medical oncologist on board who could advise you. I mean, maybe I have 3 bone mets, and my doctor said that going on intermittent ADT another time is not out of the question. In your case, with multiple bone mets, it may be out of the question, but that's why you need a medical oncologist. The other thing is, Rich, I'm surprised that with a Gleason 3+4, you appear to have a very aggressive progression of your prostate cancer. So I'm 2 things. One, I'm wondering if the Gleason score was originally correct and you might actually be higher. Maybe you need a second opinion on that. The other thing, more important thing though, is there may be something going on with your genetics. Maybe you should have gene sequencing, both germline and somatic.
To what end? To what end would I do
Well,
that?
let's suppose they discover that you have a BRCA2 mutation. There are drugs that are very effective against a BRCA2 mutation. And it could get you a couple of years of remission. As we've had guys on this call who've been treated fairly successfully on these PARP inhibitors like olaparib. So again, you need to talk to a medical oncologist about this, not a urologist.
Okay.
I see.
I have one urologist, but the other doctors, the other three that I'm working with are all oncologists. Now, maybe they're not specific to prostate, though they seem to be um, pretty learned in that area. But no, the original urologist I have in Flagstaff was the one that simply had given me the initial DRE and also had suggested, well, indicated I didn't needed to do the biopsy, which at that point I went to UCLA and, I've been outside of his field since.
So, in the interest of, I'm sort of keeping one eye on the clock here because we've got but actually even more people, and I do want to keep moving.
I have one thing. Take half a minute to say, or not.
No, go ahead, Larry.
All right. So your PSMA scan was a year ago, in 2000.
It was done yes, it was done in January 2019.
And that's before the therapy, the ADT and the
Well, yes, because we had no idea there was any metastasis. We had no idea that other than what came out of the biopsy, which at that point appeared to be encapsulated.
So one thing, I don't know if it's possible to get a follow-up a year later of another PSMA to compare and see if those multiple small metastases have disappeared from the scan, like happened to me. I had that Christmas tree, and then after whatever treatments I went through, it disappeared for a number of years. So that would be a question. If it hasn't completely disappeared, I would be very hesitant of being on intermittent therapy.
I'm sorry, I didn't get the last part of that.
Oh, I just think that the second scan, a follow-up scan to compare the two and see where you're at now might be important in making another decision.
I'd like to do that, but just getting that at all, I understand, is still a long waiting process. And of course, with everything else going on right now, I don't think that's even a consideration.
Okay.
So let me just say on that, I think it is important to get a scan, even if it isn't a PSMA scan. The problem with that is you won't be comparing apples to apples.
Yes.
But at the same time, you need some sort of baseline for where you are now. And it is harder to get a PSMA scan. There's a lot of guys on this call that have done them, in this group right now that have done them. We have a bunch of experience with them. But you need to be thinking about comparison. And you don't want to have to get a PSMA for every time you want to compare. And frankly, with the sort of disease you have, you do want to be getting regular scans every 6 months to a year. I mean, that's advisable. And I don't know if your oncologists have discussed that with you. I want to come back to Len's point about testing. Do you have any cancer in your family, Rich?
Yes, I do. My father had prostate cancer.
And any other cancer in the family?
Not that I'm aware of, other than sort of skin cancers. And I actually had a fairly serious melanoma some years back, but
Okay.
it was treated.
Well, if it was a serious melanoma and you now have serious prostate cancer, again, I think a decent oncologist would certainly have you germline tested because we know there's a relationship right there. Now, it might come out negative, but melanoma, prostate cancer in the same person, we know prostate cancer goes through generations, doesn't always mean that there is an inherited mutation that we recognize right now, but it can mean that.
Yeah.
And germline test is innocuous. It's basically a spit test. You can do it through your doctor. You can do it even online. Your daughter could order it for you. But, you know, start with a germline test and let's rule out that you have no unusual inherited mutations. If you do, as Len correctly says, then you might be eligible for certain specific drugs. And you know, it's a low hurdle, and hopefully we can eliminate it, but it may also produce some good information for you. The more complicated somatic, go ahead.
Test again, can you spell it for me? I'm not hearing it.
Germline test, Germline, which means inherited cancer test.
GERM.
M as in Mary, germline, LINE. And you can get it done yourself through somebody like Color, COLOR, color.com, or your doctors can order it through Ambry or Invitae. There are different companies that run it.
Rick, don't most medical oncologists, isn't that getting to be a standard operating procedure?
Evidently not. Evidently not, because neither of Rich's doctors have talked to him about it, notwithstanding melanoma and prostate cancer. We would hope it would be, but you know, it shouldn't be up to the patient to bring this up to the oncologist. But that's why we have this group, because we'll navigate Rich. Now Rich can raise it with his oncologist, and his oncologist can say yes or no. If it were me, we can't tell you what to do. But if it were me and I had a melanoma and I now had prostate cancer, I would think it would be worthwhile at least getting a germline test, which means have I inherited anything? If the other test, which is a little more complicated and probably maybe not do it just yet, but there may be reason to do it if your disease is increasing, is to see if you've made any mutations in your own body. And that's called a somatic test, SOMATIC. That's done by various companies. It is covered by Medicare, as is the germline test. I don't want to get too technical right now, but it's possible you should be able to get a germline and a somatic test under Medicare, but there's some confusion going on, and we're trying to sort out the rules. We're working with Medicare, trying to sort out the rules, but the germline should also be covered by your insurance, and the somatic is definitely covered by your insurance. Okay. So what I would suggest is this, in the interest of moving on, please consider adding a medical oncologist, a GU med onc to your team. Does anybody know who the go-to GU med onc is at UCLA? Because I can't think offhand. I know there's a couple of guys there. Anybody know? I'll look and let you know. But frankly,
your daughter would know for sure. Your daughter would know for sure.
Your daughter should know. What you want is a genitourinary, GENITOURINARY, genitourinary medical oncologist. If not, you know, the names we've thrown out, we can suggest names in Phoenix. We can suggest names at MD Anderson, in Los Angeles, in San Francisco. But you really want somebody, you want to find somebody who will work with your local guys so that they can work as a team, which is what a bunch of the guys on this call have done. And I just hope you'll keep coming back to us, and I hope we can keep guiding you. As you see, we do have a lot of knowledge on the call.
Well, it's very helpful. I appreciate it. Obviously, Phoenix is more convenient for me than UCLA, but I'm happy to go over there. So.
Sure. Well, you know, Phoenix has Parminder Singh, and then also the guy who's head of the group there, who I just heard. I just heard him interviewed by Chuck Ryan. and I've forgotten his name, I'll send it to you, is also good. And he's actually quite specialized with the PARP inhibitors. I just lost his name. Begins with a B.
I can tell you that obviously last year I spent at Mayo with Singh and the whole team, because my radiology oncologist, Dr. Shield, is there also. And yes, I lived in Prescott and I had some oncologists there, but I can't say enough for Mayo and how they treat the patient and the caregiver.
Okay.
Just my 2 cents.
Thank you. I'll send you the name of, well, I'll send you the names of the two guys at Mayo. Singh is one, and the other guy who I've just got to find it. I can't lay my hands on it right now.
And I'd like to add the name Cassandra Moore, who works with Dr. Singh in Mayo, who I found to be very good medical oncologist.
Yeah, another GU med onc. She's certainly well trained. She studied under Dan George, who we're big fans of Dan George in this group for various reasons. So you know, that's another person. And like I say, well, I'll send them to you, Rich. I found your email on the back side of GoToMeeting. So we'll send this all to you. And you know, the key thing is to find somebody who will work with the local guy for you. That's important.
Well, thank you very much.
Pleasure. So let me move. Anybody, anything else really important for Rich before we move on? Okay. We have at least 3 new people that have joined, and I want to check in and see if they have any questions. Dave Heinen, welcome. Would you like any time to discuss anything tonight?
Hi there, everyone. No, right now I'm just listening in. Sorry, I noticed my computer is saying barking dog iMac. I'll have to get that fixed in the screen, but my name is Dave Heinen. So I am trying to be a regular on this group. I met a couple of you guys via phone on the under 60 call-in group, I think a month and a half ago or 2 months ago. But I'm just, I guess just so you guys all know, I am low volume metastasized prostate cancer. I have 1 bone met in my shoulder and 2 potential tumors in 2 lymph nodes. I was diagnosed last year, Gleason 8. All tests and scans at that time showed negative, but we knew we had a aggressive cancer, so I had my prostate removed. Subsequently, never lost my PSA 3 months out, ended up at 1.7 PSA. So at that point, we dug deeper and had Axeman scans, showed a couple of hot spots, was scheduled to do a PSMA scan, but canceled it because at that point, through Cancer Care Alliance here in Seattle, my oncologist, we started hormone therapy with Lupron as well as abiraterone. So I'm in the throes of full-on hormone therapy at 54. So far I'm undetectable PSA, and we're just looking at options. Ongoing, we are looking at possibly, I actually had CyberKnife for my bone met in my arm, so we zapped that. And as for the 2 lymph nodes, they're very close to my rectum, so we are being much more cautious of how we may deal with those, but we're still kind of following a hunt and destroy as much as we can. But I am still trying to get my urinary continence back to completely resolved. So at this point, we're holding off a little bit before we try anything else with the risk of making my urinary incontinence bad again. But I'm rolling along, so I appreciate all the input from you guys. That's all I have for now.
Yeah, one discussion we did not have with Rich Hodsell, and we'll have to hopefully maybe hit it next Monday or the next. Well, we don't have a call next Monday, but the next call we have is treating the primary, and we didn't discuss that at all. But there is now a lot of evidence and thought that there is reason to treat the primary, even if you have metastatic disease. And there are a bunch of guys on this call who have gone in later and treated the primary, some with surgery, but mostly with radiation. Is there anyone who would like to dialogue at all with Dave? I'm sorry, Dave. I know your background from the under 60 call. I forgot this was the first time that you were on this call, so forgive me. Is there anybody who would like to talk today to David about his background, his disease progression?
Yeah, Rick, I can just say, Dave, you're at a great place in Seattle. The guys there are really dang good. So happy you come on this call, though, because you'll get different kind of information than you get on the under 60 call. So, and just by listening in, you'll learn a lot. Oh, I'm sorry, it was Ken Anderson, if you didn't know that.
Yeah, and David has a really good GU medonc in Heather Chang. And who, Jake, is Heather Chang? Are you there, Jake? I think he stepped away. Jake participated in a trial that Heather Chang ran. So I was just...
I'm here, Rick.
Yeah. Remember Heather Chang?
Yes, I do, vaguely. I don't remember the name.
She ran the gentleman's trial.
Oh, right.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay.
What was the question?
You were
just trying to wake me up. You didn't really have a question.
Yeah, I was just trying to make sure you're paying attention, Hannah. Anyone else have anything they'd like to talk to David about his disease, his progression, anything else?
If I can throw out, and yes, you're right. I'm very fortunate in Seattle here and I can't emphasize the second opinion strong enough. I'm just in an area of the country where we met with several, really top shelf oncologists, and we were fortunate enough to be able to pick from several. And we still, if we need to, move back and forth. I'm actually moving between Cancer Care Alliance and Swedish Medical, so I'm using expertise from both facilities out here. I do, if anyone would want to comment, as my life is getting back to normal as much as it can, and right now I expect I'll be on the treatment. By the way, we are talking about intermittent as a possibility at some point, but right now we are staying the course and keeping the Lupron and Abiraterone, and I frankly have not had serious side effects, the usual, but I am younger. I'm exercising as much as I can. That's gotten a little harder in the last few days, so we're keeping that course. So I'm starting to focus on, frankly, if there is any hope in the sexual department for any of those who've been on it for a long time. I am happily married for 30 years now, 32 years, and a very supportive wife, but I have zero desire, and obviously between the prostatectomy, which was not nerve sparing, they had to take one nerve bundle, so I was left with one. So that that hit me pretty hard, and then the hormone therapy really sort of did me in. So I'm actually, as of today, I was calling a different urologist, not my surgeon, because surgery is his specialty, but sexual dysfunction is clearly something he does not care about a whole lot. So I'm going back to the urologist who initially did my exam and biopsy, who does specialize in that. But I'm frankly trying to figure out how aggressive I need to chase that down, if I shouldn't say if there's any hope, but it's now that I can focus on that. That was secondary for a while, but I don't know if anyone's got any pointers or any amount of success in that department.
I'll go.
Richard, the guy, Rick, the guy Wasser, I always forget how to say his last name, but he's a Canadian guy, a professor that has a really good book I think he's from Vancouver. Richard Wass, he's on the board.
Wasserman.
Wassersug.
Wassersug.
He's someone to look up his book, and maybe even go online and watch if you haven't already done it. It addresses ADT and a little bit of, how you go about dealing with, sex with a partner.
Okay, thanks. So yeah, I'll look that up.
I will put it I'll put it in the chat window for you momentarily. Somebody else, David Muslin, did you want to say something?
I was going to go. I got I had a prostatectomy in June of 17, and I just recently 6 weeks ago got on ADT. So I don't know. I don't have a lot of experience with ADT yet, but I will tell you that the injections were amazing, and they work like perfectly, and it's just gotten to a rhythm with those. I know it's kind of weird, but for me, they work fabulously without having to take any pills.
And that's just the penile injections?
Yep.
Okay, I've heard that seems to be the most successful, and people stay on that the longest.
With the syringe, and it works out beautifully.
And once you get over the mindset of shooting yourself down there, it's not a big deal, it sounds like.
Easy, man. You know what? To get laid at this point, at this stage of the game, no problem.
I don't know, guys. Needles in that area of my body. What I'll tell you, I was 51 when I was diagnosed with prostate cancer, also a Gleason 8, and I had a prostatectomy, but I had an immediate recurrence and went on ADT right away. But I was very lucky because my surgeon right away, I mean, even before surgery, she talked about nerve sparing, and she talked about rehabilitation. She said, "You're young." She met my wife was in the appointments with me. She met us, and she says, "You're young. You guys probably want to keep having sex, right?" And my wife's a little embarrassed, but I was like, "Sure, I'd love to keep doing that." But yeah, so I would recommend, if your insurance covers it, or if you're willing to pay out of pocket, that you go to a specialist and look at, rehabilitation or some sort of therapy. I did not try the shots, but she was all about the therapy and the rehabilitation anyway. So, and I did go on Viagra. So, but yeah, many of the guys on here that I'm looking at some of their faces, and some of the guys don't have their cameras on, but if you don't use it, you can lose it. And that is true for that area of your body, and that's not just a saying, that's a fact. There is a point where you could get to where you can't have an erection anymore, because it's just atrophied too much, and it's probably not going to come back. So if you're concerned about it, then tackle it. But exercise for the drugs that you're on, like you said, you wanted to continue to exercise, but exercise helped me immensely. So I was I'm retired military. I exercised my entire career by force. I was made to exercise, but that just kind of becomes ingrained in you when you get out. You're like, okay, I'll keep exercising. So maybe it was a little easier for me to just do the regime and stuff, but the regimen. But I would definitely say exercise as much as you can. Even it doesn't have to be intense. It just has to be regular and to a point where it does get your heart pumping and get you a little sweaty. I'm not saying go out and try to be a bodybuilder or anything, or a marathoner, or like row across rivers and lakes like Rick, but just get consistent exercise. Do aerobics though, and do weight exercises that build muscle as well as aerobic. So
when you're preaching the Holy Grail, it's hard for me to jump in and help you, but I need to because we've got 4 people that I want to visit with here on the list. We want to visit with here, and Dave, I can only say to you, David, keep coming back. We got so much knowledge, and it's hard to give it all in these short sessions. I have put the link to Richard Wassersug's book, and Len just put another link in there for you. So those are a couple of things for you to start with. And yes, definitely see the ED guy at Seattle. I don't know who it is at Seattle Cancer Alliance, but if they have somebody who's specialized, then do it. So I want to get a little bit of a discussion going between Jerry Pelfrey and John Hall. Without, I think, violating any confidences, my concern for John Hall is that he's being treated at Mayo and was placed on Lupron a couple of weeks ago without being given a buffer of bicalutamide, Casodex, which, as most of you know, is just common practice. And it's hard for me to understand when you have somebody who has significant disease as John Hall does, why anybody would even think about not giving the buffer and putting somebody on an agonist. It was the radiation oncologist, and I do know that Jerry Pelfrey has a radiation oncologist that he spent quite a bit of time with recently at Mayo. And so I just want to connect you two guys. So Jerry, maybe you could talk about your experience with your radiation oncologist at Mayo and his knowledge around prostate cancer.
Okay. I, first of all, of course, had my medical oncologist and ADT before we even talked to the radiology oncologist at Mayo. Dr. Singh said I was near remission. So at that point, which was mid-November, we went ahead and now I did proton radiation for my prostate. I didn't do the EBRT or the IMRT. I chose the proton. And so I had 20 episodes. What they did was 2.5 G on either, on 2.5 G on each side, a total of 5 G per treatment. And that absolutely went fine. I really haven't had any problem at all. But I was going to ask you guys out there while I'm talking.
Can I
had to go off.
Can I just hold you for a second? We'll
Okay.
come to your point. let's just
All
stay
right.
on this point with John. Who was your doctor and how did you like him?
The radiology oncologist is Stephen Shield, and he was great. He was more open and honest, believe it or not, than Dr. Singh. So I would recommend, of course, I'd recommend both of them, but as far as a radiation oncologist, I think he's great. He just stepped down from being chief. He wanted more time to do research.
Okay, and his name again was Shield, right? Stephen Shield?
Yes.
So let me go to John. John, I do personally have concerns here. We'll throw it open momentarily, but I do have concerns about any doc putting somebody with 4+5 disease straight onto Lupron without a buffer. And I would be questioning that, doctor. Thank God it sounds like you didn't have any issues as a result, but we weren't to know that before.
My experience there, of course, was probably like nobody else. That first month I had 4 shots of Firmagon right away.
Right.
But I really had, I do have a serious advanced prostate cancer. And so that was the buffer I had. And then the next month, I did Lupron. And it was 2 weeks after I started the Lupron, I started Zytiga.
Right. So let me just explain for those of you who don't know, Firmagon is a drug. Even though it works like Lupron, it doesn't require a buffer. Lupron and the other agonist drugs all require a buffer. The advantage of the Firmagon is that it doesn't need a buffer. And by the way, Jerry's PSA was in the thousands. Remind us again what it was, Jerry?
3,193.
There you go. Okay. 3,193. So it was
it's
right.
Undetectable now.
Thank you. Okay, we
So-
love you.
So my question is, if I've had it, it's been a week since I've had the Lupron, and I don't have any real significant signs so far.
Right.
I mean, do I still need a buffer, or what? I'm not sure.
Probably not. I don't know. That's a really technical question. If you're not getting any pain anywhere, and it's probably too late at this point anyway. But I think
John,
that the issue,
sorry.
the issue really is, it would cause me personally to question the credibility of the doctor that gave it to me. That's the big issue for me. Can I throw this open, see what anyone else thinks on this? Am I way off base here?
I agree with you, Rick, 100%.
Yeah, and I got to say I do as well. Hey, John, it's Ken Anderson. Are you absolutely sure they didn't give you any pills a couple weeks prior to going on the Lupron shot?
Yes.
Absolutely sure, huh?
Yeah.
It's
And
pretty.
Lupron and not Firmagon, right? Where did you get the shot?
At Mayo.
No, where in your body did you get the shot?
My rear.
Yeah, they gave you yeah, it was Lupron.
Yeah, the standard of care is definitely a buffer, like Rick's saying, 2 weeks prior, taking Casedex to slow the flare down. Now that you've already had the Lupron shot, I really doubt there's any reason to go back and try to do Casedex. But I would question the doctor that would make such a move, because it's completely it's way, way, way off what the standard of care is. And they're at Mayo. You're going to Mayo, or where are you going?
Mayo.
Who's the doctor?
It's Dr. Carlos Vargas is the radiation oncologist, and Dr. Cassandra Moore is the medical oncologist, and Dr. Scott Swanson is the urologist.
Who gave you the shot?
A nurse practitioner, I guess.
But the shot was ordered by the rad onc. So, you know, I just, it is huge, John. I'm not trying to make a mountain out of a molehill here. And what bothers me is that if the rad onc ordered that, and he's the rad onc that's designing my radiation, I don't know how much he knows about prostate cancer. That's my thinking. That's what bothers me. That's why maybe before you go any further, you switch to somebody like Shields, who we have experience with.
You know, I think at this point, it probably doesn't really matter. That, you know, this coulda, woulda, shoulda. The water's under the bridge. In my case, of course, it was 8 years ago, and they didn't have that as a standard of care. But I had my shot. My PSA was 22 in June, and early August it had gone down to 4. So with a Gleason 8. So my PSA did not jump up even without the Casedex.
It wouldn't, Jake. It wouldn't. First of all, it was standard of care back in 2007.
Well, my doctor didn't give it to me. But my PSA still went down.
Right, but so let's not go there. The problem is that your doctor's a community doctor and maybe didn't know better, but it was standard of care. And the reason is because if there's the way the agonist works, it causes the testosterone to go up before it goes down.
Right.
The testosterone, not the PSA. And the reason they give the bicalutamide is because the way the bicalutamide works, it can to some extent protect the cancer from being aggravated by a flare in testosterone.
Right.
And so the issue is if you have metastasis that hasn't been seen, and let's say, for example, it's in the spine, and this is why they do it, it can cause your spine to collapse because suddenly you've got a testosterone that goes from maybe being 300, 400, 500. It can go all the way up into the thousands.
Right.
That's how the LHRH drug works. Then it turns it off. So what you're saying really isn't pertinent to get it to John's situation. I mean, in your case, yes, it did go down. In John's case, it will go down. But the issue here for John to consider, and this to me is a red flag, is this the right guy to be giving me the radiation therapy? I'm not suggesting he changes his GU med onc or his surgeon, but is this the right guy? And
I agree with that. And I think John should ask, why didn't you give me the bicalutamide or give me a shot of Firmagon the first month? You know, why didn't you do it? And see what his answer is.
Well, I did send an email to him after getting Rick's concerns.
Did he respond?
I just sent it today, so I wait to hear back from him.
Okay, well, John, don't hesitate to come back to us. But what I really wanted to do is give you an alternative. And the alternative is Shields, who Jerry seemed to be pretty happy with, who's at Mayo, who used to be the head of the department.
You know, I'd also add, Rick, that John, the question should truly be to the GU Medonc, the lady that's kind of your quarterback at Mayo. Your radiation oncologist, if you decide to use him, he should just be doing the radiation, planning the treatment. But the girl or the guy that's giving you the directions in regards to, you know, how much of a drug you should take, how often you should take it, how often you should come in and get checked, or when you should get scans, it should be your main guy or girl. And you should direct all your questions in regards to treatment to that GU med-onc. And she should become the one that's ultimately responsible for whatever treatment course you decide to take. You know, I wouldn't let a radiation oncologist, one, prescribe, and to top it off, I wouldn't let her prescribe it or him to prescribe it and then have someone in the lab. And again, when you're just starting out, you don't really know, but you always ask the question like, what am I getting? How many milligrams are you giving me? And what is it? You know, because they make mistakes. So that's just my 2 cents. Sorry about that rant.
Okay, look,
Thank you.
we don't have much time left. I'm going to go to Carl Foreman and then to Brian and then to Peter for his quick question. I guess I should ask, anybody else have any more comments for John about this situation but with not getting the buffer? Okay. Carl, you said you had a couple of significant questions for us.
Yes. Okay. So yesterday I had my Aximum PET scan follow-up from a year ago. I was told that the report would be ready within 24 hours. I have not heard back yet. It would go to the oncologist for his review before, I guess, getting released. Interesting procedure. As a result of the coronavirus, I was stopped outside of the building waiting for a nurse to come to my car, roll down the window, and I was told I would need a mask, which I had with me. I was able to find one at a local pharmacy, and my temperature was taken before I was allowed to get out of my car and go into the building. So once I went into the building, everything was totally cleaned. They have a separate area that is the administrative offices. Those were closed off. I was not allowed to have anyone with me. My wife was anxious to be with me, but they said no, would be no visitors. And so that was my experience at the radiation center. The next day, actually this morning, I had gotten a email from Helio, Healio, which I get regular emails about prostate cancer related topics. And there was an article about the PSMA, which there was some discussion tonight, and there have been ongoing discussions over previous sessions in this forum. And it's known that it's not yet ready for prime time, as they say. The article did say it should be happening relatively soon, but it's still not readily available. I did send the article on to my oncologist for his opinion, and he basically said the same thing, and that at the current time it's not covered by insurance, so nothing new really with that. But also my oncologist had actually responded, because in less than 2 weeks, I have my next 3-month appointment with the oncologist and the scheduled treatment for Eligard and Xgeva shots. So that's on Friday, April 10th. In his email response to me, he said what he's telling all of his patients in lieu of the coronavirus, that he's saying to patients we can delay things up to 4 weeks. And I was kind of concerned that I should delay my Eligard and Xgeva shots, because it will be coming up to that 3-month mark exactly on April 10th. He did leave it as an option to me. If I really wanted to have it, I would have to go to the Cancer Institute and have it done there, assuming that they all are using the proper medical techniques and processes to protect everybody, and that they have sufficient equipment, which has been the story on the news every day, that here in the New York area, New Jersey, the governors of both New York and New Jersey are on the TV every day, and they're basically saying they're very short with supplies. The N95 mask.
Let me cut in a second. I want to just sort of stick on what is troubling you. We can't get into resolving the COVID crisis here. First, I have one question, first of all. Originally, the Axumin was denied. Did they approve it eventually or not?
Yes.
They did. Okay,
Yes.
so guys, if your Axumin gets denied, stick with it. You can get it approved. We found that before, and Carl found that out just now. Secondly, I don't think there's any doubt that the PSMA is a better scan than the Axumin, but it hasn't been approved yet. So anybody who can get a PSMA scan, whatever it is that they're using as the contrast, you're probably better off than getting the Axumin. But as we said before, they're hard to get. Thirdly, what specifically is your concern, Carl? What are you asking us with respect to how the COVID might affect your treatment?
Well, to the extent that the oncologist is saying it's fine to delay my next treatments of the Eligard and Xgeva for an additional 4 weeks.
Okay.
So that's my question here. I'd rather get it done on time than wait another 4 weeks.
Right. So that's a good question, a very good question. How long have you been continuously on the LHRH drug?
Year and a half.
Well, I would be asking your doc, what about the half-life of the LHRH? The half-life of the Xgeva is long. We know that. So if it were me, I wouldn't be concerned about the Xgeva because they have a pretty good half-life. I know the Xgeva is different from the Zometa or Prolia. Excuse me, not Prolia, the Zometa or the Fosamax. But I do believe that the bone strengtheners have a pretty long half-life. I'm going to go to Len to confirm that in a moment. The ADT, we know, has a long half-life. Just ask anybody who's waited for their testosterone to come back when they've gone off the LHRH. So, if you're on it for 3 months or 6 months, it's going to come back relatively quickly. But if you've been on that drug for a year and a half, I doubt whether 4 weeks is going to make a difference. But that's what I think I'd be asking Len. What's your opinion on delaying? Well, not so much delaying, but medically, pharmaceutically, pharmacologically, what is the what are your thoughts? You're muted right now. There you go.
Yeah, Carl, when did you have your last Xgeva shot?
Well, I'm on a 3-month cycle, so it's 2 weeks prior to that 3 months.
Okay, so there are many oncologists who are giving Xgeva once every 6 months. So I wouldn't worry about the Xgeva because, as Rick said, very long half-life, you're covered. And as for the Eligard, I also agree with Rick's point of view here in that you've been on this drug, I think you said a year and a half. Your testosterone is not going anywhere in another 4 weeks. So I think the greater risk is for you to have close interactions with healthcare facilities and contracting coronavirus. That's your greater risk, in my opinion. Not waiting another 4 weeks for Eligard, because once again, your testosterone is going to stay very low, for sure.
I have one comment. Carl is also on olaparib. Will that affect his schedule of taking the olaparib if he's not taking a current shot of the Eligard?
Well, the olaparib I'm taking every day. It's just 4 tablets twice a day, so that's not a concern. I am on it and will continue on it.
My question is olaparib needed to be done in conjunction with an LHRH? That was my only question.
No, not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
No.
All right, good. And I agree with Rick and Len. I think you're good to go, Carl.
I just want to say that when it comes to shots that are scheduled every 3 months, the protocol has each shot. I'm not sure what it would be for you, but each shot has a plus 2 weeks, plus 3 weeks, minus 3 weeks window where they can schedule it. And maybe that's part of. Maybe you're still in the protocol.
Well, I
Carl,
mean, I'm right on time for every 3 months. So April 10th, my next appointment, scheduled next appointment, will be exactly 3 months.
Right, and there's usually a protocol window that allows 2 months one way or the other, or two or 3 weeks one way or the other. I mean, there is in terms of Lupron. I'm not exactly sure what it is for your.
Carl, what was your last testosterone level? Do you know?
10.
Yeah, it's if you wait another 4 weeks, it might be 12. That's about it.
Wow, I'll really feel that.
Hate to tell you. Hate to tell you. Have we answered your question, Mr. Foreman?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. Nazir, I am so sorry I didn't acknowledge you. I saw you came in along the way. We will, I'll try to tag you on. We'll go a little bit over and I'll tag you on at the end, sir.
Fine, that's good. All right. Thank you.
Brian Heisey.
Hello.
Hello.
Okay, so I was on probably sometime in February, I believe, and I was talking about the fact that, I've been on Lupron for a long time, two plus years, and then I started abiraterone in July of last year, and the PSA went down for a while, and then it started creeping back up, and my last test in end of February, it had gone up some more from the last time I was on. So it had gone down to 0.4 at the low point in November of last year, and as of February, end of February, was at 1.5 now. So it took a little bit bigger jump from January to February, 1.1 to 1.5. So I did go ahead and I had an appointment scheduled at Mayo in Rochester for April, and I was able to move it up to a couple weeks ago. Actually, I was able to get in pretty quickly, and I had the C11 scan again, and I had an MRI done as well as blood tests, and I met with Dr. Kwan. And the results of the scan showed that actually out of the 3 lesions that we had been watching in my back, 2 of them had decreased and 1 had increased, and that was the one at the T2 level that I've had issues with and have had spot radiation before. There were no new lesions that showed up, and they were actually pretty pleased that that was the case, and felt that an option for me to take on the T2 lesion was to have cryoablation, and recommended that I just continue on with the abiraterone because it was doing some good, even though the PSA was rising slowly. So the cryoablation is scheduled for April, I think April 9th. And I'm not sure if that's going to hold, but so far, nothing has changed there. But I just wanted to, kind of get people's opinion of, I know a little bit about cryoablation, but not a lot.
Are they going to do the cryoablation on your spine?
Yes.
Okay, that's never heard of that.
It's actually a neuro-oncologist that is doing it. I guess he's pretty well versed in this kind of treatment on the spine. They do it a lot for other bone cancers. So from what I was told, he's one of the top guys in this procedure. So
Interesting. New information. I had cryo on my prostate back when I thought it was contained to my prostate, and it was no big deal. I had to go through all the tests, EKG and all that stuff to make sure I'm, anesthesia ready. But I was in and out of the hospital within 4 hours. So I presume it'll be something similar for you with the with your spine, your T2.
yeah, they said I have to come for a physical and a discussion, a consultation, and then they will do the surgery that afternoon, and I will get out the next day.
Oh, they're going to keep you overnight. Okay.
Yeah, minimally invasive is what it's supposed to be. So
correct.
We don't have a huge amount of experience with cryo in this group, Brian, to be honest. I know Jake had it, and I think over the years we've had a couple of other people that have had it. My inclination, I think, especially given the sensitivity of the spine, would be that I would get a second opinion as to whether it's a good idea to treat that area with cryoablation and how safe it is.
I had cryoablation on a couple of spots on my spine about a year or so ago.
Oh, thank you, Les. Okay.
Well, and I had palliative radiation from T2 to T4 when I first started treatment. But it was X-ray with Dr. Shields, and it was palliative.
Right.
And
right.
It worked.
Yeah, I mean, I think the issue is the cryo rather than the radiation. Les, I know you're also at Mayo. Was it the same? Is this with the same team that Brian is going to? Who did it for you there? Les?
You're muted, Les.
Yeah,
yeah, I'm sorry. I was looking for the button here.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to look for see if I could find a name. I don't recall a doctor's name at the time.
Okay. And it was successful for you. You had no issues. The procedure was comfortable. Recovery was fine. No issues.
Got out of there and didn't know that anything had been done.
Okay, great.
In fact, I just got back and went to the family doctor for something else, and he couldn't find the spots where I had the surgery.
Okay, great. I don't know, I think if it were me, Brian, I would want to get a second opinion on the cryo versus doing spot radiation, SBRT on it. But anybody else have any input on cryo for spot treatment?
Well, Rick, I had spot treatment twice in that area, and they were concerned. I think it's where it's at or something, yeah. And then they're being able to get, hit that area again.
Well, you mean probably all the more reason why, and the first two times was with radiation, correct?
Yes, spot radiation.
I think all the more reason that I would want to get a second opinion from somebody on whether going after the cancer with cryo after you've twice had the area treated with RT, what the risks are. I'd want to get a second opinion on those risks if it were me.
I agree.
Anyone else?
I agree on that, Brian. I think you should get a second opinion. None of us really have much understanding or experience with cryo as a type of spot treatment. So second opinion wouldn't hurt.
Okay. Thanks.
You know, it's just, it bothers me that, I mean, it's very difficult to do spot radiation twice in the same spot, and they've done that. So you don't know to what extent the spine is weakened in that area and how tolerant it will be to any procedure. God forbid it isn't. The last thing you need is to be in a wheelchair. And I just would want to have some comfort that a procedure in that area is acceptable.
Good point.
You know, and then if they say yes, fine, go with it. But I just think you need to quantify it a little bit better. Or I would. You don't need to do anything. If it were me, I would want to quantify it a little bit better, having twice been treated in that spot.
Okay.
Okay. Peter, you had a quick question.
I'm gonna defer it to Nazir. I think mine's been covered. I don't want to go on into it right now.
Okay, Nazir, welcome. Most people don't know your story.
Yes.
I can fill them in very quickly, and by telling them that Nazir is an amazing 82 or 83. I forget.
83.
83. You'd never guess it if you met him. You'd think he was 65. I think it's his wife's curry. Nazir's been here since 1948 with the separation of India and Pakistan. So he grew up in the snow, and that's why he lives in Buffalo, or he lives in Niagara Falls, Ontario, to be honest. Same difference. And has been treated in Canada. And we finally convinced him to try and get a consult, and he had it all set up with Alicia Morgan's. And one of the things we really wanted to do was to get him sequenced. He's been on, he's had docetaxel. He has been on abiraterone now for several months, and we're not quite sure whether the abiraterone is working or not. And there are some other reasons to think that it's probably the right time to sequence, to do somatic testing. And so in a nutshell, that's where we are. I would let Nazir tell you, but we're just over the witching hour, so I wanted to move this on. So I have told Nazir that you know, nothing major is going to happen in the next 4 to 8 weeks, and that to try and get back in and see Alicia Morgan's as soon as he can, but he needs a GU med-onc to guide his treatment. He's been offered Keytruda and another drug that I forget the name of that is sensitive to the RB mutation. All of these are in trials, but he doesn't know if he has the RB mutation, and he doesn't know whether he's MSI high or not. With that said, Nazir,
yes.
What would you like to tell us, and what are your questions for this august group?
You asked me what was my PSA.
Yes.
And it is 20 now.
And what I have to look. Remind me what it was before. Was it 16?
16.9.
Yeah. So it continues to go up, right?
Yes.
And how long have you been on the abiraterone?
3.5 months.
So guys, what is your opinion in this group as to as to whether the abiraterone might yet work.
By the way, I went and saw it. I had a teleconference with Dr. Morgan.
Oh, you did have a teleconference with Dr. Morgans?
Yes, I did. Very interesting and very, very knowledgeable doctor. Very impressed with her knowledge. And she spent a lot of time with me, and she offered some pointers as to what I should do. And the first thing she says, same as what you said, get the testing done.
Okay.
Yes. And
I didn't pay her. I didn't pay her to say that, Nazir.
And she said the extendee plus Keytruda trial would be the appropriate trial. But the other component of this trial, I'm not very happy with, and that is extendee plus placebo. And there's no crossover. So supposing I get this extendee plus placebo, what happens to me as we go along?
That's a great question. You're never committed to a trial, so you can always pull out.
Yes, but I like to know whether I am getting the Keytruda and extendee. If I'm not getting it, they said they cannot tell me.
Oh, you would know if you're getting the Keytruda, because the Keytruda is an infusion.
Yes, that's right. But they said when you do the placebo component of it, we'll give you just saline solution. And
I see. So they're going to give everybody infusion. Some people are going to get saline, and some people are going to get pembrolizumab. Well, one thing I would say, we'll open it up, but one thing I would say is that most people that we've known who have gotten immunotherapy have had side effects.
Yes.
If they've gotten nivolumab or they've gotten pembrolizumab, they have had some side effects.
Yes, yeah, she said that, but she said most people don't. This is what she said. Most people don't have it, but some do, and then we give them the steroids to overcome the side effects. But the oncologist in the cancer center over here said that you could have a reaction to it, and it could be life-threatening.
It's true. I mean, we're dealing with that right now with one of our fellows, and it is true. Yeah.
Is he well?
How well is he? How well is he, Len? Have you spoken to Foodie? I mean, he's hanging in, but his thyroid has really responded badly to the anti-PD-1.
Oh.
Yeah.
Len?
Yeah, I think that Richard Foodie is usually a little more communicative when things are going well, and when they're not going well, he kind of gets quiet. And we've tried to reach out to him, and he hasn't really gotten back to us. So he's not responding well. Is my my best guess.
But then, is he discontinuing the treatment, or is it?
Well, they did suspend it. It was suspended because his thyroid function was so out of control. It was causing all kinds of cardiac issues with racing pulse and low blood pressure, and he was getting kind of panicky. So they were still trying to get that under control. And Rick, you can correct me. I don't think they had gotten it fully under control the last time we heard from him.
No. I mean, this is why I said to you before, Nazir, I would start with the foundation medicine testing, because let's find out if you're likely to be receptive to this Keytruda or not.
Yes.
Because if you're not likely to be receptive to it, then maybe these trials are not the best option, and we have to work with Dr. Morgans and others to find the next treatment for you. And there are other treatments.
Yes. She said that the other one that we touched is the LU-177 plus 225. And she said, why go all the way to Germany or Australia to get that treatment? Probably we can do something over here. There are several trials that are coming up. But in the meantime, she said, you want to continue with this therapy that you're on because of the coronavirus. And you don't want to take chemotherapy or anything while this is going on, because it'd be a danger to your life if you got both of them at the same time.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I do think that if you're not on chemo right now, but I also think that chemotherapy, maybe cabazitaxel is a option to discuss with her, because you did well on the chemotherapy a long time back.
Yes.
And the chemo and the cabazitaxel is less intrusive. And if we got the results from your sequencing and found that you were likely to be receptive to other agents, we could add them, just like Peter is doing. Peter's doing docetaxel and carboplatin right now. And look, he still has his hair. You can see, right?
Right.
Right, Peter?
Right. So, Nazir, another thing you could ask Alicia about is both Len and I are on a drug called Nubeqa or darolutamide, which you can get for free for 2 months and try it out instead of Zytiga. And
Yeah,
see
but
if
Peter,
huh?
Peter, he's in Canada. It's not approved in Canada.
I thought he was in Buffalo. Oh, he's on the Canadian side of Buffalo.
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. What does that mean? He's U.S. or he's Canadian?
I don't know, but you can try it. I mean, she might be able to get it for you for a 2-month free trial, and you'd know within a few weeks whether you respond to it or not.
Okay.
I mean, it's without going. It's not a trial. It's not really a trial. It's just a kind of a giveaway.
I'm going to ask I will ask the oncologist over here and Dr. Morgan. I have 2 oncologists that I'm working with here. One at the cancer center in Hamilton, and one at cancer center in St. Catharines. So I will ask them, and I'll ask also Dr. Morgan as to what her views are on that. And
right.
So tell me more about this. Has this been helpful to you in any way?
Well, Len and I are finding it pretty tolerable. I find it much better than Zytiga, and it's dropped my PSA, and it continues to work. And it doesn't give me brain fog. It's pretty simple, and they approved me, even though I don't qualify for their standards. They approved me for the whole year for it for free. So it's put out by Bayer.
Okay, I'm going to talk to them. I will speak to them and see if they will put me on darolutamide.
I put it in the chat window for you, Nazir.
Pardon?
I put it in the chat window. If you click on the little bubble, white bubble at the top right, it'll open a window and you'll see the name of the drug, Nubeqa, and darolutamide in there.
Oh, yes. Okay. Thank you. Yes, I see it here. Yes. Thank you very much.
I do think that there are, I mean, Nazir has asked me on several occasions, well, what else is there?
Yes, I would like to know what else is there, yes.
And, there are various chemotherapy agents. There are various drugs that you might be that might be applicable if you do your sequencing. You've got to do this. You have to get this sequencing done somehow or the other. I mean, as Alicia
Yes.
agreed. And then we know that you might be responsive to Xtandi or darolutamide, even though you fail the abiraterone. Some people are.
May I add something to that?
Oh, yes, Alan. Hello, hello. We're almost finished. We started at 3 o'clock today.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I thought it was 5
We
o'clock.
always love you when you're on. Okay.
Just a couple of comments. Nubeqa, there is no evidence yet that it extends survival the way some of the other agents do. Just a caution, there's no reason to believe it won't extend survival, but currently there's no evidence that it does. And other hormone therapies have been tried and have lowered PSA, but have not extended survival. So just a caution on that. Another thing is you talked about the Foundation 1 test, which is expensive and takes a while. Something that's cheap and easy you could do is the color genome DX, which is just a saliva sample and costs $250, I think.
Right.
And it will tell you if you have BRCA mutations that are germline, but it won't tell you
somatic.
if you have some somatic mutations. But certainly it's worth the $250 to find out about the germline mutations, and if it's useful, then olaparib may work for you. The other thing was you talked about was cabazitaxel.
Yes.
One thing I would certainly do now with COVID-19 is get Neulasta with that to amp up your immune system.
Right. So let me just address those. I think that probably Nazir has agreed that he's going to hold off on chemo until a little while, until the COVID scare is. He doesn't want to put himself in a situation of having chemo whilst there's still a COVID-19 scare.
Yeah, this is what they suggested. Dr. Morgan suggested. There's none oncologist over here. They don't even want me to come to the hospital.
Right. As far as the germline test,
yes.
I think, have you done a germline test? I can't remember. Did you do the germline test?
No, none of these tests. I have never done them. There is a list of tests that Dr. Morgan said. Whatever these are, she needs a CPS score. She needs an MSI and NG sequencing, germline testing, and there's another one that's that's the extent of the test that she would like to see.
Right. So, I mean, I guess she's saying probably to do germline and to do the foundation medicine. But the reason why we pointed Nazir towards foundation medicine was because he needs to know his MSI, because he's thinking about doing a trial which includes Keytruda. And so we directed him that way. Now, Canada has, Foundation Medicine has a site just for Canada, has a Canadian site.
Yes.
And we've hooked Nazir up with their navigation program, and he would get subsidized on the test.
Great.
So whilst the cost of the color is probably less, I'm not even sure if color is available in Canada.
It is.
It is. Okay.
And of course, it doesn't require a biopsy the
Right.
way Foundation One does.
Right.
It's just a cheap and easy thing to do. And my thing is, why not do it?
Yes.
Right. Jake just sent me a memo, a note, and reminded me that we've got another meeting starting in this room in 10 minutes.
Okay.
I've forgotten completely.
All right.
And I am so sorry, but we're going to have to cut this because we've got to stop this recording and close the room and then reopen the room for the MS people. And Jake, thank you so much for reminding me. Nazir, I will talk to you, but my advice would be, yes, do the color, but you really need to do the foundation medicine test, the foundation medicine too.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
All right.
So I'm closing out quickly. We'll speak to you all. Next week's a 5th week, and we don't have anything arranged. We tried to, we couldn't do it. We'll speak to you all, I guess, the Monday after that. Whatever that date is, it'll be
The 6th.
The 6th.
No, 6th
Yes.
of April.
The 6th of April.
Yes.
Be in touch with us if you need help between now and then. We're around. Okay. Goodbye,
Thanks,
everybody.
thanks, guys. Thanks, Rick. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Sorry to rush you all out of the room. Bye.